You know, Madam Speaker, when my parents immigrated to Canada in 1986, I was a year old. And the reason that they immigrated to Canada from Iran is because in 1979 there was an Islamic revolution, and our once free and democratic country was taken over by radical Islamists, was taken over by terrorists, and was taken over by fascists who actually executed over 40,000 communists in the late 80s. And so my parents escaped in 1986 because they wanted to live in a free and democratic society. And I was a year old at the time. And we were blessed to be able to come to Canada to escape that hatred, to escape that radical, fundamentalist, Islamo-fascist ideology. And that's the same regime, Madam Speaker, that denies the Holocaust. That's the same regime that spreads anti-Semitic information and propaganda, not just inside the Islamic regime of Iran, but around the world and through its proxies like Hamas and Hezbollah and others. And so when we came to Canada, my parents raised myself and my younger sister, always telling us how blessed we are to be Canadian, and we should always put Canada first. Never forget your heritage, never forget your culture, never forget your background, but always remember that you are first and foremost a proud Canadian. And what that means, Madam Speaker, is you come here to embrace culture and diversity and accept people for who they are, and you leave the problems of your home country behind. Now, it doesn't mean you can't speak up, Madam Speaker. It doesn't mean you can't attend rallies and protests. I do it all the time in support of the people of Iran who are fighting for freedom and democracy against the brutal and terrorist Islamic regime in Iran. But what I don't do, Madam Speaker, I don't go to protests calling for genocide. I don't attend protests where I say from the river to the sea, and I can't even finish that sentence because it is abhorrent and vile. And to anyone who says these are peace rallies, it's appalling that I have to put this in Hansard, but it needs to be done so that the world will always remember what these hate rallies were about. This is a message from the Palestinian youth movement, one day after the horrific October 7 genocidal massacre of 1,400 innocent Jewish people. And it says, Toronto, all out for Palestine. Join us Monday, October 9th at 2 p.m. An unprecedented series of events has taken place by our heroic resistance in Gaza, with over 30 Zionist hostages captured, the fall of settlements surrounding Gaza, and the prison break that destroyed the fence that has been entrapping Gazans for over 17 years. The resistance's offensive attack has shaped a new precedent for our national liberation struggle, and we remain steadfast in our right to resist by any means necessary. We call on our people in the far diaspora in Toronto to uplift and honor our resistance and our martyrs. Join us this Monday, October 9, at 2 p.m. at Nathan Phillips Square and celebrate our steps closer to liberation. Shameful. Shame. I was in Toronto on Monday because Monday was Thanksgiving, and I was walking my dog, and I happened to come across this pro-Hamas celebration, this pro-Hamas rally. It was the first time in my life that I had ever felt uncomfortable as a Canadian. The hate, the anger, the way they were marching, the chants they were making, that's something you see in the Islamic regime in Iran. You do not see that in Canada. That's the kind of behavior you see in radical fundamentalist countries, not in Canada. That is not the Canada that my parents immigrated to. That is not the Canada that we were raised in. That hate does not belong in Canada. What was even more shocking to me, and I didn't realize this until a few days later, what was even more shocking to me is that the member from Hamilton Centre marched in that parade. participated in that very same parade, rally, celebration, whatever you want to call it, the pro-Hamas rally that supported the genocide. The member from Hamilton Centre marched in that. She can try to explain away her statement. She can try to say whatever it is she wants to say, but silence is louder than words. Even prior to this, when I had the unfortunate opportunity of having to hear her voice in this legislature again, she spread misinformation. She accused the State of Israel of bombing a hospital, even though it was debunked right away. It was the Palestinian Jihad organization, and Hamas was using it to spread propaganda to fuel more hate rallies around the world. She also failed to mention anything about the 1,400 innocent civilians. She failed to mention that the Hamas terrorists must release the hostages. You cannot negotiate with terrorists, Madam Speaker. You cannot. As someone who comes from a country that is ruled by Islamic regime terrorists, we know you cannot negotiate with them. They have no problem killing people. There's someone who's named Mossab Hassan Youssef, and I encourage everyone to look him up. Mossab Hassan Youssef is the son of a Hamas leader. He defected. He knows what happens on the inside, and he has some fascinating interviews. He's even wrote a book called Son of Hamas. And in that book, he writes, and in his interviews, he writes, Hamas does not care if you are Israeli or Palestinian, Arab, Jew, Bedouin. They do not care. They will execute everyone. They do not care about the people. They use Palestinians as human shields. And he said every few years, what the Palestinian Authority does, the Palestinian leadership, they will just create a war because they know what's going to happen is Israel will retaliate, and then the world will be outraged, and then they will get money through donations. That's what he said. This is someone who was born and raised in Hamas, and he defected. Another thing that was very shocking for me, and I can't fail, I have to mention this. The hate and the violence at these pro-Hamas rallies is getting worse. Yesterday, I believe it was yesterday or possibly the day before, Cafe Landwehr in Toronto was surrounded by pro-Hamas supporters at the rally, and they all started chanting, boycott, boycott the Zionist cafe. Madam Speaker, what does a Jewish-owned cafe in Toronto have to do with the conflict in Israel and Palestine? We are being faced with full-on hatred, full-on anti-Semitism. This is not 1933. This is 2023. And what's horrifying is that in 1933, Cafe Landwehr fled Berlin because of the anti-Semitism they were experiencing then, and now 90 years later they're experiencing it once again in Ontario, in Canada, and it is horrifying. And this is what the member from Hamilton Centre supports. This is exactly what she supports. We all, our hearts bleed for all of the innocent lives lost, including Palestinians. But if you cannot call out terrorism, if you cannot have the moral clarity to understand that the root cause of this is terrorism that's funded by the terrorist and illegitimate Islamic regime in Iran, if you are out there spreading a message of divisiveness instead of caring for people, then you should not be in this legislature. Hear, hear. Thank you.
Thank you.